Hey everybody, it's Comic Crack. This is a video response to Ghost Critic's recent hashtag WTH, Dear Marvel and DC. As I was watching it, I'm about halfway through the video already, and even halfway through the video, I know that this needs a video response. I guess we'll go kind of point by point that he made. The first one is one that I agree with, the whole event scenario as far as just Marvel and DC. Again, we're more of a Marvel household now, so I can only really speak from that side of it. I can't really speak from the DC side. But as far as like all the Marvel big events and stuff, I completely, it's the one point that I 100%, well so far, that I 100% agree with. It does get to be a little much, especially when there's a lot of crossover to other titles, for sure. It's 100% true, and that to me, he mentioned something later about lazy writing. That to me is kind of a little, maybe lazy isn't the right word. Maybe that's incorrect. I just don't find it as gripping. Now, all that said, what I do like about the events, for example, Original Sin or Infinity, for example. Well, let's go with Original Sin. The great thing about that one was there was a mini-series, an Original Sin mini-series, and we decided to read that, me and Mr. Tom, or Mr. Tom and myself, and we loved it. And what made that better for us was that there was all this crossover that was happening with other titles. You didn't need to read the titles to get the story, so we didn't buy them. We just flat out didn't buy them, unless they were series that we were already buying, like we're already reading Avengers, we're already reading New Avengers. We wanted to try out the Hulk Original Sin one because it sounded like an interesting premise, so we bought that one. But I mean, if they're going to go in that sort of strategy, I don't mind that as much. Again, the whole idea of a big event bothers me a little anyway, because I'd much rather just have the stories going and flowing on their own. I mean, I understand from a business side of it the need to kind of cross-pollinate and, you know, have a big event that ties everything else in and hopefully get new readers that are reading one title to read another. I completely understand it. It does get a little boring though, and he also made a very good point of like, this is the one that's going to change the universe until 2 months from now when the next fucking event starts. And that's something that really does get a bit old. I'm gonna pause you for a minute because I want, like I said, I want to address these point by point, so I just want to review his points before I comment on them. So I'm just gonna watch the next piece and then I'll come back and we'll talk about that one. Okay, so I'm back. So point 2, this is the one that kind of lit a fire under my ass when I first watched it and made me think about it. This is it's a bit of a, it's not a touchy, it's just a bit of a, I mean, as everything, that's one thing that is kind of a thread throughout my points, I guess. It's not as kind of black and white opposite, really, black and white. It's not as cut and dry as some of this is made out to be. So here's my points about this second point. His second point was diversity, but now he said that. He was saying that, you know, for example, making Thor a woman, turning the Falcon into Captain America was lazy. I don't know if I'd agree with that. I think that maybe I should restructure this argument, the argument against posed by T. Fuller. The one thing that he suggested, which I do sort of agree with in this point, was, why not create new characters? Why not create a new black character? Why not create some new female characters? Why not create some homosexual or transgendered or whatever path you want to go down? Why not create some new characters? Great point, and I don't disagree with that. That, I think, though, ties into some of your later points of how people aren't buying comics and the pricing and stuff like that. To tackle some of these, not issues, but some of this subject matter as far as race is concerned, as far as females are concerned, as far as, or males versus females even, or however you want to contextualize that, or sexual preference is concerned, do you really think that creating a new character is going to get those ideas out? Do you really think that this audience that you believe isn't there for comics, or this new generation that isn't buying the comics anyway, or the people that you're saying because of the prices can't afford to buy new comics, do you really think that they're going to take a chance on something like that? Or do you think that maybe some of the ideas and thoughts behind having the Falcon as Captain America, or the ideas of having a female Thor, do you think that some of those ideas that the writers want to get across are going to have a broader audience and are going to reach more people if they put them in like a Thor book or put them in a Captain America book? And I think that's the crux of my disagreement with this one, is that I don't find it lazy. I find it interesting. You have this character that already existed, and you then place somebody else in that role. Now, I am a fan of Remender's Captain America. I'm not caught up, so again, some of this is definitely coming from absolute ignorance on my side of it, because I haven't read the new Thor, I haven't read the new Captain America. So instead of talking about details about the book as far as its lazy writing, I can't tell you, because I haven't been there, I haven't read the books. So it may very well be lazy writing. It may very well be there's no reason to put those characters, change those characters, but the idea of doing that, I think, is a good idea. Again, for the reasons of getting across to an audience that's already there, that knows these characters. They know Thor, they know Captain America, they know whatever next character you're going to create and change or whatever. Now, does it feel a little bit like grasping at straws from the companies? Sure. I would sort of agree with that. I know you didn't say that, but that's something from my own mind. It definitely feels a little bit like, well, we've got to do something to spice it up. Why don't we do this? And then that point in itself, in my mind, puts a lot of onus on the company really dictating. And I just don't know how much Marvel as an entity dictates to their kind of prize writers. If you look at a guy like Rick Remender, who's writing a lot of books across the boards for independents and for the big companies, I know that I'm sure that there's some editing that goes on, but they've let him take a lot of wild chances. And again, I go back to the Captain America book. He put him in the future, right off the hop, the very first issue of his run. When I read The Punisher, he created Frankencastle. Like, that's allowing a writer to take some chances. So I find it hard to believe that they're, at this point in a writer like that's career, I find it a little hard to believe that they'd be clamping down and manipulating his storytelling so much because they want to put out some books under a diversity banner. Now, that premise might have been theirs. Hey guys, here's a cool idea. Why don't we ... But I don't know how much farther it would go, and that would be a really interesting question to ask of, like, the Jason Aarons and the Rick Remenders, that somebody should do at some point. You know, I know there's a couple of comic book type of news channels or whatever. Comic Archives, I think, is one or something. That would be a very interesting question to hear those guys answer, as far as when it comes to writing for the big companies, how much influence do they have? And I'd really like to hear that. So mean anything, lazy, character we know, creating characters. Yeah, and I think that kind of hits on the strategy. Do you think that's the strategy? I made some notes as I've been watching because I want to make sure that I kind of get the ideas out there. And then I guess one point that he also said was, do these stories mean anything, or however exactly he phrased it. I think with anything, the stories do mean something, and I think, again, it goes back to what I was just saying. It depends on the writer. Do they mean anything when it's a bad writer at the helm? Probably not as much. It just maybe the intention was there, but the actual message got lost. I like to think that they still mean something, and again, like, keeping in context, keeping in mind my comic world here in my house, which is me reading comics, Mr. Tom reading comics and watching the movies, and even special sexy lady friend diving a little bit into some of the Image stuff, you know, so I don't know. We'll get to that point actually later, because there's a whole thing about reading I want to talk about, but that'll go into something later on. I'll be back. I'm going to watch the next part here. Okay, so point 3, price point. This is another one that kind of gets my hair standing on end a little bit. I mean, it's interesting, and I know, you know, I know about passion for things. I know about passion for comic books, and I know about passion for things that we enjoy, and we want them to be a certain way, and all these kind of things, and I totally understand that. But you kind of said it yourself, it is a little ignorant on your part as far as some of these points are concerned. If we go back to what you said about the diversity, and you talk about creating new characters, if you really want to embrace and create all these, you know, tackle maybe race issues, tackle sexual issues, tackle male and female issues, or not issues, but just exploring those characters. You said it yourself in this one, creating new characters, having the prices up too high, nobody's taking the chance on them. Nobody's buying the books. The books get canceled. So that's one that really stands out to me. And then, I mean, in general, I mean, I don't know how, like, do I really need to go into this too much about the price? Come on. I had a job 10 years ago. I had a job, hell, let's even go closer. I had a job like less than 5 years ago. I had a job a year ago where I was getting paid a certain wage. Things go up, first of all. Prices of things go up. The cost of living goes up. You have people who become skilled at their job and are creating more of an income for a company. Even if you look at sports and things, those people are naturally, like anybody else, going to want more pay. The world changes. We don't get the same, people aren't paid, well, I actually watched a documentary on this. Some people are still paid less than a living wage in the United States and in North America, and I'm sure across the world, but this documentary was specifically the United States, so it's going to kind of negate this comment a little bit. People in the 70s versus today are getting different pay in some areas. Again, some areas are getting the same pay. Things cost more. Manufacturing costs more. Printing comics that nobody's buying cost more, which is, you know, as much as it pains me to say it, I love the print books, but I mean, digital is just going to be the way that you're going to get those kids into books who are playing video games and stuff. You can lower the price there because your costs are lower. If you're going to print books, you're taking a chance. You have to be able to make that money back. I mean, I think that's just the basics of that. The one point about that is that, yeah, the prices are too high, so then it ties back to the first point about the big events. It is a bit unfair for the companies then to have these big events because, as you're saying, and rightfully so, people are on fixed incomes. They have a certain amount of money to spend at certain things, and that's just the way that it is. And yeah, I agree with you. It is a bit unfair for the big companies that are doing comics to put out so many titles and have these big events that cross over and stuff, but it's also unfair for, you know, laser discs, VHS to DVD to Blu-ray of the same fucking movie. Like, all of that sort of thing is an unfair system that's been created as far as like technology goes, and it just happens to fold into what we enjoy as well, reading comics. It's all this whole system that's flawed for sure, and I don't disagree with that, but the baseline of this is that things go up in price. I mean, it's just the way that it is. Again, it sort of ties in with this documentary. My hope is that part of the reason things are going up is because they're treating their writers and artists and colorists and letterers and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I hope that they're treating their employees well. Again, it's maybe another very good question to ask people working in the comics industry. It would be a really cool documentary to really delve into this all these ideas that are explored here and that we've talked about so far. I would love to hear from some insiders in the Marvel and DC now, just about those basic things. I hope I'm not rambling too much. I'm trying to keep it in mind here. There was the point about the kids don't spend the money. Again, my world is Mr. Tom and my family here. Mr. Tom spends some of his money on comics, plain and simple. I buy comics for Mr. Tom. We do those things together. Mr. Tom still plays video games. Mr. Tom in his mom's house has a Galaxy. He plays video games. He plays games on the computer. They have a Xbox and things. He doesn't have those things here. He doesn't have video games here. We have board games here. We have comics here. We have books here. We have those kind of things here because that's how I want my house to be, our house. He plays some video games on the phone, but it's restricted. I think this ties into a whole thing now about reading in general, that it's like so many things, it's parents and kids doing things together. And I'll point out to Travis, Oddfellow's Thoughts with his son doing the videos when they used to do videos together and sharing these activities together, and his daughter. It's about parents and kids being able to do these things together. And I think that the reason why kids aren't necessarily catching on to comics is because some of the parents probably reading isn't probably a part of their lives at home either. It's probably not a big part of their lives. Reading is a really big part of our lives here in this house. It's something that we do together. It's something that we do with our daughter now, like already, and have been for quite a while, like from under 1 year, 8, every single night we sit and she plays and we read her stories, we read her books. Her library is enormous. So I think that's how you get the kids in a little more. I think it's a bit unfair to put it on the fact that kids aren't getting into comics because the comics are $3.99. I don't buy that. I call bullshit on that. I think it's just that kids aren't reading as much. And even talking to Mr. Tom about it, some of his kids in his class, so the kids in the class go to see the Marvel movies. Do they read the comic books? Some of them don't, or most of them don't, rather. Most of them don't. There's a couple of kids who do read books and read some of the comics and stuff. But I think that number is small. But I think that more kids are definitely into video games and things. And again, it's about reading just isn't a part of everybody's lives these days, unfortunately. I think, and again, the whole thing about going digital, that's part of something that we'll tackle later, because that's, I think, one of his other points, is that's how you're going to get to these new audiences. A lot of kids aren't going to go down to the comic shop to browse through the comics. Digitally, you might be able to get to them more, and then again, digitally, I believe you can get prices. I mean, I still get updates from Comixology and emails and stuff like that, and they always have like 99-cent sales going on, $1.99 sales. They always have like comic pack sales going on. I just don't read them digitally. I experimented that for a while on Comixology, but I just don't do it anymore because we prefer the print, you know. And I really hope, on a kind of a sidebar, I really hope that that doesn't go away, because that will be a fairly sad day if print ever fully goes away. But on the flip side, there's such a vast amount out there already that we haven't read and barely touched the tip of the iceberg on, as far as what's already out there, that I think will be fine. It would be unfortunate if that sort of thing goes away. I don't think it ever will fully go away, but that I think is a different conversation. So there's the points on price point. Again, I hope I made sense there. Let's go on to point number 4 from our friend Ghost Critic. I'll be right back. Okay, so point 4 is a little bit shorter of a one. To hell with Hollywood. It was his premise there. Hollywood versus comics, and he puts it very succinctly and correctly. I think at this point, fuck making your comics like the movies. I would agree with that. I know those weren't his words, trust me. This is a different channel you're watching. You're not watching his channel. I would agree with that. I think that little experiment, I'm hoping that it was an experiment, and I'm hoping that time period is coming to an end, of altering characters to look like their movie counterparts. And I think that's just an issue in general, though, and I think that's a natural thing to happen, though, if there's a boom in another medium for a particular medium, especially like writing or comics and stuff like that. I think it's a natural thing for people to get excited and go, oh wow, I would love to write something that got turned into a movie, and having that as your drive to creating a comic. And I think with time, those kind of writers and those kind of people just get weeded out, because that's only a small window. And as fans, as we all are in this community, I think we know well enough for our own tastes and stuff who those people are and who the writers are that we're going to focus on and that sort of thing. I'm not super concerned about it. One thing I would like to see, I don't know if it's just a fact that none of those people watching the movies are transferring over to comics. I'd really like to see some numbers on that, as far as sales before and after kind of the Marvel movie boom. Again, something else that would be really good for this comic book documentary that's going on in my head. That would be interesting things to see as well. Because I don't know if it's necessarily true. And again, my household, I can't speak for everybody else. My household, that transfer rate is high. But again, I think that goes back to my previous point that reading comics and reading books in general is a big part of our lives here. So when we do see a Marvel movie, like Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, which I was never a fan of, didn't really know much about, period, loved the movie. I didn't want to necessarily read the comics, but Mr. Tom was curious about the Guardians of the Galaxy comics. Mr. Tom was curious about Captain America after seeing the Captain America movie. Mr. Tom is curious about seeing something that he doesn't know because we don't read it here. He's curious about that transfer. I'd like to read some of those books. But again, I think that's because reading is such a part of our lives here that he knows that it's something that we can do together. So the whole point of that was, I just don't know if it has as little an impact as you necessarily think that it does. Is the impact enormous? No, for sure it's not. I don't think it is, but I'd be surprised if it's as low as you think that it is. I would be surprised. Doesn't mean that I'm right, but I would be surprised. Okay, so let's go on to his 5th point. I'll be right back. Okay, so I won't even finish writing that. I just finished watching that and was writing a last note. So point 5 is New Blood, and man, if you're watching my channel, you know how wholeheartedly I agree with this. This is the one thing where me and my friend who got me into wanting to make videos, or one of the guys that is a huge influence on me making videos here on YouTube, are in complete, absolute 100% agreement. Let's shake hands across the internet. Yeah, New Blood. 100% Let's get some new people in. And that's something that is something that draws me particularly into new books, and then therefore draws Mr. Tom into them, because some of the books I buy, like Winter Soldier, for example, I bought it because of Marco Rudy. I hope I'm saying that right. Marco Rudy or Marcus Rudy? Marco Rudy, I believe. I bought it for his art. Do I care about the Winter Soldier? Not particularly. Do I like the idea of what they're doing with Winter Soldiers? How far as he's taking over for Nick Fury in the original Sin story arc? I do like that premise. I do enjoy that premise. But it's that artist that drew me into that. The new Elektra book, it's that writer and that artist that drew me into it, because I love the look of that book. I love the way that book reads. So yes. Let's see some new let's hear some new voices. Let's see some new artists. Again, let's go to the Marvel side of it. You have these people who are writing these books. These books are popular with the comic nerds that read them. Are you really going to want to take a chance on getting somebody else to write a book that has these extraordinary sales? Probably not. It's a bit of a scary option, because the print is dying in their minds and they have to do anything they can to kind of keep it going. So it's an understandable response from them. And I think that it's probably a response that lies in the real world. I don't think there's a lot of people that want to take a chance on some weirdo artist or weirdo writer that they don't know about. I think a lot of people want their same guys. They want their same guys. And I had a brief look at the comments, and I know that Sleepy Reader kind of sparked up at that point too, and I don't completely disagree with you either, because there's some guys, like, I would love for them to keep writing, but I do also crave some new blood, and you put it really well, Ghost Critic, about, like, I've seen Scott Snyder's Batman. It's a great point. I've seen it. I want to see somebody else's now, and I completely agree with that. Get somebody in, write for a while, see their viewpoint, get on to the next person, change the art up a little bit. It's all these great points in this last one. The one thing I think is a bit ridiculous is the statement of, you know, I think he said at the end about that's going to help bring in new readers. The movies aren't bringing in the new readers. The price isn't bringing. A new writer and a new artist are going to bring in the new readers. Come on. Let's be realistic. That's just nonsense. That's insanity, my friend. There's a bunch of other things they can do. Do I have answers to all this Marvel, DC bullshit? No, I don't have answers. I know what we like. I know that we'll keep reading Marvel because there's always books from Marvel that we really enjoy as a family and that I enjoy on my own. I do have to say, though, that most of the Marvel books that we read in this house are ones that I read with Mr. Tom. The ones that I choose to read on my own are Image and independent and small press stuff. That's just my own personal thing. But I find we do really like some of the Marvel books, and again, I don't know much about the DC side of things, but from Marvel's standpoint, they are taking a bit more chances, I believe. With artists and writers and things, you know, it's really hard also to take chances on writers when you have one guy who's an architect for these entire arcs, for these entire universe-changing events, right? It makes it really hard because then they're committed to this whole world, you know? So that does make it pretty tough as well to want to introduce new talent, especially on the writer side. Artist side is a little easier to introduce new talent. You can get people doing a guest issue to give them a shot to see how it goes. Writers is a whole other thing. Yeah, so as he said, thanks very much for watching. I hope I didn't bore you to tears, and I hope that actually made a bit of sense going through this. So thank you very much, Ghost Critic. I feel much calmer now that I've been able to do the video instead of trying to get all these ideas down in the comment box under your video and completely flooding it. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all soon.